My name is Veronica Irvine, and I am a lace maker and a computer scientist. I am often asked which came first, my interest in lace or my interest in computer science. The answer is both. At the age of 10, I made my first piece of lace, which was a tatted doily, and I also wrote a program, which was instructions to an HP plotter to draw a Christmas card. I've explored both of these interests throughout my life, and it is a great pleasure that I'm able to combine these passions. I've always been struck by the logical, organized nature of bobbin lace. So I decided to see if I could create a mathematical model of how bobbin lace patterns are designed. I didn't try to model the entire pattern, but I focused on a small part, the part that looks like a texture when you look at the piece up close. Lace makers call these grounds or fillings. These small repetitive patterns can be seen to fill in, for example, the background, in which case they often look like a net, or they can fill in the space between motifs or inside motifs, in case they may look like stars or flowers or have different interesting textures to them. The first question that I wanted to answer was, have we found all the possible textures that can be used in bobbin lace? To do this, I created a mathematical model which basically describes or captures all the necessary properties or conditions for a piece of lace to be workable, for one of these ground textures to be workable. I used mathematics to describe these properties using things like graph theory, topology, and abstract algebra. The result from this work that I find the most exciting is that I was able to prove that there are an infinite number of these lace textures. Perhaps you are wondering why an infinite number of textures is an interesting or significant result. To answer that question, let me talk a little bit about how we describe different styles of lace. A style is defined by two main things. The first is the context of the lace. Is it floral? Is it geometric? Does it have figures such as people or animals in it? The second identification characteristic of a style is what kind of grounds or fillings, or I like to call them textures, were used in the making of that lace. It's very specific to each lace style. Over the past 500 years, lace makers have developed perhaps several hundred different styles of bobbin lace, usually developing in a particular region or a particular period of time. Knowing now that there are an infinite number of these different textures, we can now say that we've only scratched the surface of what is possible in bobbin lace. That is, we can say that bobbin lace is not an exhausted, antique form of a fiber art, but is very much alive and very much an area that needs to be discovered in much more detail. Saying that there are an infinite number of textures is kind of an abstract result. To make this more concrete, what I have worked on is finding new textures that have never been worked by lace makers in the past. To do this, I have taken a traditional lace ground, cut it into little bits, reassembled those bits in new ways, and then used my mathematical model to test whether or not this new way is actually a workable bobbin lace ground. I've been able to discover millions of patterns this way, leveraging the advantage of computers. They can do this kind of search and comparison very quickly, and they don't get tired, so they can do it over and over again and not complain. For this exhibit, the pieces that I have included are a spotlight on individual textures. Each of the textures was discovered by my computer algorithms and using this mathematical model, and I have made the texture in each piece the center, the focus of the piece. I have deliberately used a very thick thread when creating these pieces. In traditional lace, a fine thread is used, and that means in order to see some of the detail of the textures, you really have to look at it with a magnifying glass, and this will reveal the beauty and the interesting parts of the texture. I have also paid particular attention in these pieces to symmetry. For example, if you look at Be Prepared, imagine yourself as an ant walking on the surface of the lace. There is a spot on that lace that you could position yourself and take a picture of what you see and then turn 60 degrees, that is 1/6 of the circle, and take another picture, and it will look exactly the same. I encourage you to try and find that spot. There's also a spot where you have to turn a whole third of a circle, and another spot where you have to turn a whole half of a circle, or 180 degrees, for the before and after pictures to look exactly the same. Similarly, Traxial Arrowheads has two different places where you have to turn a third of a circle to see the image be exactly the same. The piece Della Costica explores symmetry in 3 dimensions. The texture itself has symmetry of 1/6, 1/3, and 1/2, similar to Be Prepared. But what I've done is taken that texture and wrapped it around a ring, that is a circle with a hole in the middle, or to be mathematical, you could call it an annulus. And what I've done is I've created the lace going around that ring 3 full times, so the end result would look like a corkscrew with 3 rotations, or a spring. Then I took that spring and kind of twisted it open so that the ends could meet and form a continuous path. But because it had gone around 3 full times, it wouldn't sit flat. There's too much curvature to lie just flat in 2 dimensions. So it has to naturally fold itself into 3 dimensions, giving you these lobes or waves. The name for the piece comes from the little stars that you see in the texture and the fact that they are arranged in space in these arcs, which is exactly how Father Secchi described the stars in the Sagittarius arm of the Milky Way.